I'm Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. Okay, a couple disclaimers before I start on this video. First thing is it may meander a little bit, wander a little bit. I'm not too sure how long this video is going to go because there's so many moving parts with this one. The other thing, if you're watching this video, it means I've decided to publish it. At this point, it's 50-50 because the blog I'm going to talk about here about this money laundering issue, and I'm going to talk a bit about some tax evasion and not paying capital gains tax. I've got an update on some of the pre-sale condo flippers that was happening. This is one of those blogs that I can't win on no matter what. People are always going to give me a thumbs down on this for what I'm going to say in this blog because they're going to say, Owen, you're a realtor. Of course, you've got biases towards seeing this market continue to go up or downplay any slowdowns or any corrections we get, which of course could not be further from the truth, but I know I'm never going to convince some people. If you've read my book or know anything about me, my business, and how many years I've been in this business, these type of short-term things, money laundering and taxes and what the market does, mean absolutely zero to my business, nothing. I'm one of the few people, I think, if you go back and watch the last 8 years of my videos and look at what I've been saying, I'm one of the few people, I think, that paints a balanced picture to real estate. I give you the good stuff, the bad stuff, and everything in between, but I always keep my focus on what real estate will do for you in the long term. Buying your principal residence as opposed to renting, keeping it because you need shelter anyways, hanging on to it for 20 or 30 years and you're going to do incredible. Or down the road, buy an investment property, max out your RRSPs, max out your TFSA, start creating passive income flows. That's when you can start living the type of lifestyle I live. Not to brag, but if you've read my book, I've been doing this for 33 years. I've built a nice passive income machine that if I chose to many years ago, I could have retired and live a comfortable lifestyle based on the passive income flows. That's what I keep this video blog to, and I keep things positive because I've always told people negative stuff is always out there. It's a continuous churn that the media will give you. Once one passes, another one comes. That's how they sell newspapers. I tell people to just focus on you, focus on what you can control. And keep your attitude positive. Life is about your attitude, your outlook. If you don't have that, it's going to be very difficult. You're going to end up like these complainers that point fingers at everything for their lack of success. You do not want to be those people. And that's why I know I speak to the 4,000 solid hardcore converters, plus all the people that have bought my book that can understand or relate to what I talk about here. Because I've been through it. This isn't theory, it's practical stuff for me. But the blog I'm going to talk about here, I don't like doing these blogs because they're kind of on the negative side and what I'm going to talk about here. But I have to because it's in the news and I'll give you my take on some of it here and just maybe give you a little bit of information that the media seems to completely ignore a lot of the time. Why let it get in the way of a good story is what I always say with a lot of the things you read in the newspaper about the demise of the Vancouver real estate market and it's overpriced and it's in a bubble and the whole market was driven by tax evaders and money launderers and foreign buyers. It's simply not true. And if you've watched my blog over the last 7 or 8 years, I think I've pretty much dispelled a lot of the stuff that has been brought up and then kind of forgotten. You hear much about the foreign buyers anymore? How much money are they bringing in with the foreign buyers tax? That's kind of been swept under the carpet because we've got a new flavor of the month now. So it's tough for me to win on these blogs, but if you're watching it, it means, hey, I decided let's post it anyways, even though I can't really win on this, but I'm hoping to open some people's eyes here, just give you the straight, unbiased goods here. So first thing I'll say as well, we're going to talk about the money laundering situation, and apparently the NDP now is saying that maybe $7 billion in the province was siphoned into real estate and exotic cars via money laundering. It started at $1 billion or something a year ago, and now it's been pushed up to 7 or 8 billion. So the other thing I want to point out, everybody that I know, including myself, the Vancouver Real Estate Board, everybody wants to see this situation corrected. Who wants to see dirty money put into the economy, put into housing, exotic cars, clothing, whatever? That's the thing that kind of perpetuates the NDP on this, because everyone wants to see this problem happen or get solved. But I'm going to reserve judgment on a lot of this stuff, like I always do. I don't make predictions. I play it safe on this blog, and that's why if you watch my blog for the last 8 or 9 years, people come to the realization, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, because it's just a long-term thing. These things are transient. They come and go. So I'm going to reserve judgment on this whole thing with the money laundering for now. But what I will do is, if you're not following me on Twitter, I have been posting some articles lately on some people starting to wonder what exactly is going on with this money laundering thing. And it seems to be typical of the NDP, kind of a flavor of the month thing. Started with the foreign buyers, then went to the empty homes. None of those panned out. Now we're kind of going after the money laundering. Now we all want to see this ended and stopped. I certainly do, because not so much from a real estate standpoint as I'm going to talk about, because $6 or $7 billion, I want to point people out, is not moving the needle whatsoever on Vancouver real estate. Even if all that money turns out to be true, which according to the articles I'm reading now are grossly inflated. And there's no proof. They're guesstimates right now. So that's why I'm going to reserve judgment on it. But even if it is, we're talking a $250 to $300 billion annual business here in BC. I often tell people, I've pointed out many times before, my office alone, just my office, Macdonald, Westmar, we've got a big brokerage. We've got over 250 realtors in my office. We do over $1 billion of sales annually, easy. So put it in perspective. And that's what some of these articles that I've been posting on Twitter are starting to look at here. Carol James stepped up and said, this is the reason now why you haven't been able to buy a house in Vancouver. That's classic textbook NDP. It's not your fault. It's never your fault. It's always somebody else's fault, and let me put my arm around you and vote us in again, and we'll help you buy that Yaletown house or that Cole Harbour condo. That's kind of what it's like here. 6, 7, 8 billion, 10 billion, let's say, is less than 1 or 2.5%. That's what the influence would be on prices if that turns out to be substantiated. But again, let's reserve judgment here, because Mr. Eby, our Attorney General, his batting average is 000 right now. Hasn't done anything. So I want to see, just like everybody else, I want to see some charges laid. I want to see some financial institutions charged. I want to see some houses repossessed. I want to see money brought back into the province from these people that apparently bought these properties and cars with money that was laundered through illicit means. So let's see what happens with it. But let me talk about a few things here, and it might get a little unwieldy here, because again, you don't hear a lot of this on the media. First thing, if you go back and watch my blogs from 4 or 5 years ago, as you know, the NDP, before they came into power, were telling everyone that this market was being driven by foreign buyers. My blogs at that time, 4 years ago, were saying, I don't really see it. I'm sorry. I sell a lot of homes. My colleagues that I'm in contact with all the time were selling a lot of homes. I went on my blog saying that I sell a lot of detached homes, a lot of condos. A lot of my buyers are Chinese. As a matter of fact, back 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago, pretty much all my buyers were Chinese buyers on detached homes. But none of them were foreign buyers, I said. I got some thumbs down from people. These were all either had their Canadian citizenship or they had their permanent residency status and were getting ready to get their citizenship. So they were not foreign buyers. 3 years ago, of course, the real estate board changed our contract of purchase and sale. I never hear people talk much about this, but you have to declare now on the contract of purchase and sale what your citizenship is for tax purposes. I have never had anybody check off the box for a foreign buyer. Now they've gone one step further. 2 years ago, even the sellers have to declare that now if they're a foreign buyer or foreign seller for tax reasons. Never had that either. I haven't met a colleague yet that's had anyone. Now, prior to the foreign buyers tax, was there foreign buyers buying? Yes, I didn't have any, but I'm sure there was. But I can tell you that the majority of them were in the process of getting their PR status. The market was going up so much that they thought, let's buy in now, even though it's still 4 months away before I get my PR. So there was some of that. But the foreign buyer's tax now has been in for 3 years. 3 full years. So the results are in. Do we even hear about what's being collected on that anymore? Nobody is triggering the foreign buyers. It was a myth. Yes, there was a few foreign buyers, but they were toting out numbers of 30%, 25%. It turned out it's less than 1%. And how much money are they collecting from the foreign buyer's tax? It's now 20%. They're collecting very little. They don't even talk about it. The next thing, moved on from that. Next thing was all the empty homes. Again, I don't want to continue this. I've blogged about this many times. They told us there was thousands of empty condos in downtown Vancouver. Their test to this was that they would go down to Cole Harbour in February at 6 p.m. and half the lights were off in the buildings. That was their proof that they were all empty, even though it turns out they weren't. Many people were using those homes part-time. In these luxury condos, many of them have got second and third homes. They're furnished. They're not interested in speculating or flipping. They use the homes part-time. So the Vancouver empty homes tax now has been in place for 2 years. The results are in on that too, and they are underwhelming to say the least. Let's admit it here. They said they were going to bring in hundreds of millions of dollars. Last I saw, it's $30 million minus the cost to run the program. The NDP bring in the provincial BC speculation tax. Even though we already have one, it's called capital gains tax. They said there was, again, thousands upon thousands of empty homes, people parking money. Again, I said, I don't see it. First off, it was very strange. Why would someone, even if they wanted to park money, leave a downtown Yaletown condo, a 1 or 2 bedroom, empty? Well, why not just rent it out and collect $28,000 on the 1 bedroom, $50,000 on the 2 bedroom? They're still parking money, and now they're making income while they park the money. If they don't want to handle the tenants or anything, for 10%, they can turn the keys over to a property manager and they'll do everything for them. Send them the rent checks. What turned out to be empty, of course, was some larger luxury detached homes and some luxury condos, because those buyers were well-heeled buyers that had multiple properties. The crazy thing about the BC spec tax, and this is, go to my Twitter feed. I've posted many articles on this, and there's been all kinds of people that have come out about this. You know, Carol James was saying that the BC spec tax was going to bring in $100 odd million in the first year, and then you saw those numbers, they were projecting those numbers to go up. Well, if this program is so good, those numbers should go down instead of going up. It didn't make any sense whatsoever, but again, this is how the NDP roll. This is how they operate. It's all optics here to try and make it look like they're doing something. That's how these guys roll. That's how they're hoping to get reelected. That we're going to get to the bottom of this. It's not your fault that you can't afford that $600,000 Yaletown condo. It's speculators. It's people parking money. It's empty homes. It's foreign buyers, and it's money launderers. That's why you couldn't afford that home. It had nothing to do with you working, saving your money, investing it, making the sacrifices to get the 80 grand down payment. No, that wasn't it. It's everybody except you, but we're going to help you. We're here to help you. People, you've got to start looking past this. It's smoke and mirrors. Again, I understand people's frustrations. I honestly do. I've done so many blogs on this. Vancouver is a crazy, crazy expensive real estate market, just like about 60 other cities I could name here. People continue to think that Vancouver is an anomaly. They obviously do not get out much. From here all the way down to San Diego is the exact same story. Many cities in Europe, dozens of cities in the US, Toronto you could put in that category. These are not inexpensive cities. To live in these cities is not a right. You're going to have to work to live in these good cities. And if you don't, I can totally understand. People see these comments in the Vancouver Sun about saying that I moved out of Vancouver and never looked back, and Vancouver's terrible and it rains too much. I'm happy for you. If you're better off going to another city and you don't miss Vancouver, then good for you. I think you made the right move. Because there are a lot of other cities where real estate is aligned with incomes. The problem is, in my opinion, they're not desirable cities for me, but they might be desirable cities for you. And if they are, then I would by all means go to those other cities. But you're going to have to work, and you always will, to be able to live in downtown Vancouver, in Cole Harbour, in the West End, in Yaletown, or buy a detached house. But people are doing it every day. That's what you have to realize. If you had a graduating class out of your high school of 300, I bet you half of your classmates have bought a home, at least. So they've done it. They didn't use the crutch of foreign buyers and money launderers and parking money to not be able to get into a house. If you look a little deeper, they worked for it. And that's the way life is. That's why I'm trying to tell people to look past a lot of this stuff. It's just a look over here type situation. Well, the real problem is over here. The real problem is going to be up to you. You're going to have to make things work here. A couple of other things here. If you listen to a lot of the media, they would make you think that the Vancouver real estate market is the Wild West, completely unregulated, do whatever you want, buy homes with suitcases full of cash. There's nobody monitoring anything. And that is about as far from the truth as you can. But again, with the media, don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, of a good headline. The headline that $7 billion was laundered through real estate, and that's why the prices are where they're at. They're not moving the needle. Even if that turns out to be true, which according to the experts that are coming out with these stories now on my Twitter feed, think it's a pipe dream, which I agree with these people. And these are economists, professional financial accountants. The number's just thrown out of a hat. But even if it was, it's 1 or 2%. It's not enough to have any influence on the prices. The prices were drawn up here for a number of reasons. Go back and watch my blogs on this. Equity-driven market, cheap interest rates, and one of the most desirable cities in the world to live in, bar none, and by far the most desirable city in Canada. Good cities have high real estate prices. If you can show me a good city that has the lifestyle and the weather and everything else going for it and has cheap real estate, let me know, because I want to buy a couple of houses there. You pay to live in these cities. Not easy, and I feel for the people that are frustrated. I've always said this, that they're frustrated. It's a tough market to crack, but you're going to have to do the mirror test. And stop looking for excuses. Tune out Carol James. She is a piece of work, this lady. She really is. The no drive party, career politician, has no clue what she's talking about. You take her advice and you follow her and you think that she's going to help you buy a house, you do that at your own peril. But every day you do that, you're wasting another day that you could be turning the corner here and taking matters into your own hand, which you're going to have to do. Back to the Wild West though. Here's the thing. There is no buying real estate with suitcases of cash. The amount of paperwork that's required to buy a house right now and the amount of background checks, financial checks we have to do is unbelievable. A, you've got to declare whether you're a Canadian citizen for tax purposes, buying or selling. B, we haven't been able to take cash for a down payment in 15 years or more. It has to be a certified bank draft. One step better though, we have to fin track you on all this stuff. You have to do a source of funds, which means if you have a $30,000 deposit on a 1-bedroom condo that I receive, I need all your banking information. I need to know the name of the bank, the account number, the transit number, what type of account it is, and whose name that account is in. So they can cross-reference to see where those funds came from. Before I can even talk to someone to buy or sell a home, I need to fin track them. 4 pages that documents everything, date of birth, photo ID. It's funny how you never hear the media talk much about this. So I'm going to reserve judgment on the money laundering thing, but as I say, let's wait for the proof to come in. But even if some of this $2, $3, $4 billion turns out to be the case, it's not enough to move the needle, folks. I'm sorry. I want to talk about a positive thing here, at least where we are getting, into getting some progress here from Revenue Canada. Because again, I want to see people paying their taxes. I really do. If people are buying homes and not paying tax and buying those homes, I want that house confiscated. Just like these people that were buying pre-sale condos and flipping them, I want them to be charged. In some cases, if they're a serial flipper there without paying taxes, they should get some jail time. I know it's harsh, but it looks like some of these guys might be. And I'm all for that. One of the reasons is I've told you guys before, real world problems for me. I'm a successful guy. I make a nice income, but I'm under the belief that I have to have a bottle of tequila here, and my wife knows to stay clear from me during May when tax season comes. I pay quarterly installments to Revenue Canada, and then I got to write them a fat check at the end of the year. I'm under the belief I'm paying way too much in taxes, and part of that reason is if I find out that people are cheating on their taxes, then by all means, I want to see them prosecuted, fined, and pay what they owe. Maybe it'll, not holding my breath, maybe it'll bring down my tax rate a little bit, just a bit. I pay well into six figures to Revenue Canada. I know, real world problems. When you're paying that kind of money, it means you're making good money, and I'm not complaining. Well, I am complaining, but I sure would love it if we saw a little lower tax rates here. Instead of half of what I earn go to Revenue Canada, which is what happens. So follow up on a blog. As you guys know, I've done many blogs on the areas that Revenue Canada and where they need to tighten the screws. Principal residence exemption abuse. That is where all the big money is going. I've done 4 or 5 blogs on it. Putting homes in multiple kids' names and the wife, and then flipping them or selling them later on as a principal residence and avoiding any capital gains tax. We need to tighten the screws on that. I hear they're looking into it. We'll see how it goes, but that's where the big money is. The other one I've talked about was these people buying pre-sale condos, in some cases more than one, and then assigning them and not declaring the income on those. Now, as I've said before, this is straight up tax avoidance, tax fraud, highly illegal, and it looks now, finally, that most of these people are going to get caught. A lot of them already have. So, you see, the reason that they explored this loophole, where they saw a break here, these people, is because they were assignments. And you see, an assignment doesn't get charged at the show up at the land titles office because you're not buying the unit yet. All you're doing is buying the original purchaser's contract. So these morons, which is what they were, thought, hey, this is a loophole here. It's not at land titles. I can flip it and I just won't declare the income. But they were wrong. Because of course, Revenue Canada, they're smart. They started slowly hearing rumors of this, and sure enough, they started auditing several dozen pre-sale complexes that were sold. I hear some of them are in Vancouver, some out in Surrey, Burnaby, Coquitlam. And lo and behold, they found that there was a number of people that were not declaring that, what we call the lift. And remember, the lift on these things, on these pre-sale assignments, is generally not capital gains. Capital gains is favorable. It's only 50%. Most of these ones are being charged at your full marginal tax rate. Because if you have no intention of living in it and you sell it before completion, you're usually paying at your full rate, which is 50% more than the capital gains tax rate, of course. So a few things I want to point out here. The vast majority of people that sold assignments, first off, assignment sales are very small. Of the overall market, probably a fraction of 1% are sold as assignments compared to the overall Vancouver real estate market. For every 10 assignments, though, there were, I'm going to say at least 8 or 9 were done properly. They were smart. They filed the paperwork to their accountant, said, I bought this as a pre-sale for, let's say, $100,000. I sold it for $150,000. 3 years later, before it completed, I made $50,000. You declare it as income on your income tax, and it's added to your working income and taxed at your full marginal rate. But of course, you get these morons, these absolute idiots is what they are, that decided I'm going to avoid paying the tax and I'm going to turn criminal. That's what they are. They're a criminal. They've audited some of these, and apparently they've already nailed 400 or 500 of these people And now, of course, and this is good on Revenue Canada, and I'm hearing now that they're going to start hiring a lot more auditors, and they're going to go back in on and start auditing way more. Hopefully they do all of the pre-sales sold in the last 5 years. I would love to see that. Because they realize, yeah, it's going to cost us 10, 20, 30 million dollars to hire more auditors, because it's going to take some time, hire some more people. But if you're getting back 200 or 300 million dollars in penalties, then it's well worth the investment. So if you're one of those morons that bought a pre-sale, flipped it as an assignment, and didn't declare the income, you're in trouble. I would advise you, if you haven't been caught yet, and it's probably only a matter of time, it might take another 2 or 3 years, but they've got all the time in the world. I would advise you to call a lawyer on this week and admit to what you did. Maybe they'll be a little more lenient on you. Tell them it was a mistake. Sorry, I sold this, didn't declare it, and pay the tax man. Maybe they'll give you a little bit of a break. But can you imagine these people? I can't imagine it at all. And I've always said to people on my blog here, pay your taxes. Pay your taxes. People complain about paying capital gains and income tax. Well, the more income tax and capital gain you pay, and I complain about it too, but it's a good thing. It means you're earning more money and getting into higher tax brackets, especially capital gains. Capital gains is good. Capital gains mean you made money. You made a profit. You made a nice return. Capital gains is also very favorable in this country. It's only 50% of the gain is taxable at your marginal tax rate. So it's a fraction of what you pay on your working income or interest income. But if you haven't been caught yet, there's a good chance you're going to here. Now, you see the difference between this, and I've had some people on my blog talk about it's easy to avoid capital gains tax. People do it all the time. You don't have to pay. And they are nuts, these people. You will never avoid paying capital gains tax. It might take a year or 2 or 3 before Revenue Canada catches you, but they will. Can you imagine being on pins and needles for the next 4 or 5 years, all to save $20,000 or $30,000 on the tax? You're now going to be on pins and needles for 5 years waiting for that letter to show up in your mailbox, which more than likely will. A few people are going to get away with it. Some will. But the odds are against you that you're going to get that Revenue Canada letter, and they're going to tell you the jig's up. We cross-referenced your income tax return and with the developer's documents for your assignment, and you're in trouble. Not only are they going to fine you and get all that money back plus interest, but now you're going to be labeled a tax cheat. They're going to probably audit you now continuously for the rest of your life, because once a tax cheat, always a tax cheat is what they think. You're going to be under a lot more scrutiny. All that to try and save $20,000 or $30,000 in tax. It's crazy, and you already made $200. It's just greed. But back to the situation where most people are selling properties would be, it's going to be on the land titles. It's going to be interacted on the real estate board and registered at land titles. I have people tell me on my blog here just recently that everyone's avoiding taxes. Nobody pays it. You're crazy. You, for sure, if you sold a Yaletown investment condo, let's say you bought it 10 years ago for $100,000, sold it this year for $200,000, you made $100,000. The nice thing is you got capital, it's only taxed at capital gains. So half of that gain, $50,000 at your marginal tax rate. So maybe you're going to pay $18,000. You're making $100,000, you're going to pay $18,000 to the tax man. If you're dumb enough to try and avoid paying taxes, commit fraud, illegal, to save 18 grand, you're out of your mind. Because eventually you should realize that this is very easy for Revenue Canada to check on. Revenue Canada goes through, they audit who is buying and selling homes. They want to look at all the sales, the condo sales. It's very easy for them to say, okay, Mr. Green here sold this Yaletown condo for $680,000. Bought it 10 years prior. Let's pull his tax return just to have a quick look at it. The first thing I'll look at it was it his principal residence? Did he declare it as a principal residence or not? If he did, then maybe a little less scrutiny, but they still might scrutinize you because you don't have, if it's principal residence, you don't have any tax owing. But they still can come back on you on that too. They're also auditing those, the principal residence sales, which I'll get to. They'll check your tax return and say, okay, it was an investment. Did he declare that $100,000 capital gain? If he didn't, you're nailed. And you could go 2 or 3 years before this comes back on you, because we're talking tens of thousands of transactions at the Vancouver Real Estate Board every year. But if you think you're avoiding it, you're nuts. Even on the principal residence sale, you check that box, depending on how long you've owned it, the first thing they'll look at is, well, when did he buy the house? If you bought the house 30 years ago, that's a lot of capital gain, but they're probably looking at it with less scrutiny because, hey, the guy bought the thing 30 years ago. It's obvious, probably more than likely has been his principal residence. They still might do some checks. If it was just bought 2 or 3 years ago and you're selling as a principal residence, sometimes that can bring up more scrutiny. Again, most people are paying their taxes. They're like me and like all my clients, which I advise them, don't pay your taxes. There's always going to be some idiots out there, some morons that try and avoid paying taxes. But I'm here to tell you that you're going to get caught, contrary to some of these guys on my YouTube blog who think people are getting away without paying capital gains tax. They might get away with it for a few years, but eventually you're going to get nailed. So they are making progress, which is good to hear, CRA, on these really dumb guys that sold pre-sales as an assignment, so it wasn't registered at land titles, but they're going in. The developers, by the way, are innocent in all this, I should point out. Developers have nothing to do with this. If you buy a pre-sale condo, 2 years later, you have to get the developer's approval. They'll charge you a little bit of money to assign it, but the developer keeps all those records. The big difference was it was never registered at land titles because you weren't buying a unit yet, you were buying the contract. But Revenue Canada now is going after those. If you're one of those guys that did that, I'd be very worried. You're going to get a letter in the mail probably in the next 2 or 3 years. They'll probably will, some people will get away with it, but most won't. And in my opinion, it's not worth the risk, and it's not worth being on pins and needles, because if you get caught, there's some serious penalties there. So we'll see where all this goes. The bottom line is what I'm trying to tell everybody here is these stories, foreign buyers, parking money, empty homes, money laundering. These stories, there's a new one right around the corner. I don't know what's going to be next. There'll be another one. But I want people to realize that you need to understand that these things come and go. Don't lose sight of the big picture on what real estate can do for you. You know, real estate, the market is slowed here right now, especially for detached properties. The condo market's barely been scathed. We'll have to see what happens later this summer. Price-wise, we're off maybe 5 to 7% on condos. It's not even really an official correction yet. It's just a slowdown for condos. We'll see where it goes, but this is normal. I hear people on the news saying, I saw some article about $50 billion of equity taken off the Vancouver housing market. Oh, big deal. It was way worse in the 80s. More than that was taken off in 2013. That's what markets do. The real estate market, the stock market, it doesn't go up in a straight line. There's going to be slowdowns, price corrections. I look at them as buying opportunities. But it shouldn't matter to you because the house is shelter first. It's your principal residence. As I've always said, long-term need certainly beats renting, especially at today's interest rates. You can get a 5-year rate now back down to 2.99. Cheap money. Or it's an investment. And if it's an investment, you're not a speculator or a flipper. That's the only thing that these short-term things should matter to is flippers, which we don't have much. We never have had a lot of speculation in the Vancouver market. I know people will disagree with me. What do I know? I've only been in the business 33 years and sell homes every day. Sure, I've had homes that people have bought, fixed up, renovated, added some value to, and then resold. Yes, there are people that bought pre-sales. Most of that speculation was done in the pre-sale market, but they paid their taxes, the vast majority of them. The ones that didn't are going to get caught. And there's none, I can tell you, speculation going on in this market. When the market turns and starts going back up again, in the early innings, I'll start to get some people that will be buying my condos that need a reno. These are pros. They'll do a 40, 50, 60, 80K reno. They know what they're doing, and will sell it 6 months later, and they'll make a bit of money. They're not getting rich. It's a kind of an incremental game these guys play. But anyways, I'm off track there. Keep focused on the big picture. In my opinion, let's see what happens with the money laundering thing here. But don't fall for it. It's not going to move the needle. It didn't move the needle, contrary to what Carol James will tell you on why you weren't able to afford your condo. The only body that's going to help you afford to buy a condo or get into your first studio apartment out in Langley or whatever is you. You're looking at him or her in the mirror every morning. It's not Carol James. Quit using these things as some crutch, some excuse that you're not able to get where you want to be. Your friends and peers are all doing it. And for God's sakes, get away from the government. As I always said, do not rely on the government for anything. Nothing. Distance yourself as much as you can. Pay your taxes and go about your business. Don't rely on them to help you in any way, shape, or form. They're not your friend. It's going to be on you if you want to get ahead in this world. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.